What is dark money? Dark money is unlimited, untraceable cash donated to political organizations. And since 2 court decisions in 2010 dismantled a century of campaign finance reform, it's been dominating our politics. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, wealth and power were concentrated in the hands of a very few oil, steel, finance, and railroad magnates. You might have heard them called robber barons in your history class. These men poured secret money into political campaigns, essentially buying politicians who would support their agendas, making the businessmen richer and more powerful, but not protecting the safety and prosperity of the workers who made their products or the people who bought them. In 1907, President Theodore Roosevelt urged Congress to pass the Tillman Act, which banned corporate contributions to federal candidates and political committees. This ushered in a new era of campaign finance reform, which over the next century saw limits to the size of individual contributions, spending by unions, and requiring public disclosure so that everyone could see who donated and how much. Using this information, voters could make informed decisions about whether they believed a politician was in the pocket of special interests. By 2010, individuals could give up to $5,000 per year to political action committees, organizations that were technically independent from politicians. And while this is more money than a lot of people have to donate, it was still within the means of many Americans. In 2002, the McCain-Feingold campaign finance reform prohibited corporations and unions from using their general treasury funds for these independent expenditures. Even though polls consistently show that large majorities of Americans across the political spectrum favor strict spending limits and transparency in campaign donations, a small, ultra-conservative minority, including the Koch brothers and Betsy DeVos, had been looking for ways to dismantle campaign finance regulation, and extreme right-wing lawyer Jim Bopp had been chipping away at it, case by case. Citizens United was a right-wing group with a long history of making negative campaign ads. They made a film called Hillary the Movie, attacking Hillary Clinton, and argued that it was not a political campaign donation that could be regulated by current law. Hey, it's just a movie, right? Lawyers claimed that corporate donations to political action committees were protected free speech, and in 2010, a 5-4 vote by the Supreme Court of the United States agreed. As long as they didn't hand their money directly to a candidate, which could be seen as corruption, but instead gave it to outside groups that were technically independent, corporations now had the same rights as people to influence elections. Another case in 2010, Speech Now versus the Federal Election Commission, used the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United as precedent to overturn limits on how much money individuals could donate to outside groups, so long as there was no direct communication with the candidates' campaigns. However, as long as the money didn't go directly to a campaign, unlimited contributions by both corporations and individuals were now legal, and soon some PACs transformed into super PACs because the money flowing into them went exclusively to these independent political expenditures. While super PACs were able to accept unlimited campaign contributions, some donors shied away from them because they still had to disclose their identities. However, a type of nonprofit known as a 501c4 or social welfare nonprofit could take anonymous donations. These nonprofits were supposed to work exclusively for social welfare, but in practice, many are primarily funnels for political donations. Like political action committees, they can't fund electioneering support for candidates. They are technically limited to issues. In practice, individuals and corporations give anonymously to 501c4 nonprofits, which then donate to PACs and super PACs, which then fund mailers, robocalls, TV ads, etc., that support a candidate, often by attacking a candidate's opponent, who then supports the agenda of the original anonymous donors. If politicians and elected judges refuse to support the extreme views of the donors, the money will go to support someone who does. Before, in order to influence politics, a lobbyist would be paid by special interests to try to convince someone to support an issue. Lobbyists have to register with the government and disclose their employers. But many super-rich donors support policies that aren't popular, like removing safety standards and lowering the minimum wage. It's much less risky to hide behind organizations that don't have to disclose any information about their donors. Often, money from one organization goes to another, which donates it to another, and so on, until it's almost impossible to know who is behind it. And when that comes to light, Organizations often just change their names. Some nonprofits and PACs are just a mailbox in an anonymous office building. When there's no law requiring disclosure, we don't know who's buying the politicians. It's like a one-way mirror, with the ultra-rich donors looking out and the rest of us unable to see who is behind the glass. When there are no limits on contributions, the people with the most money have the most power. We may all have freedom of speech, but they have the loudest voices. Using unlimited dark money, the wealthy can move policy and parties without disclosing their identities, and that's not good for democracy.